about to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see.
The number one tactic for generating a favorable first impression is the easiest to do. Smile. Smiling accomplishes 4 powerful things. It conveys confidence, happiness, and enthusiasm, and most important, it shows acceptance. People who smile are perceived as confident because when we are nervous or unsure about ourselves or our surroundings, we tend not to smile. Smiling, of course, conveys happiness, and we are drawn to happy people. We simply view them more favorably. Enthusiasm is essential to making a good impression because it's contagious. Your smile shows that you are pleased to be where you are and to meet this person, and he in turn becomes more interested in meeting you. Finally, smiling conveys acceptance and lets the other person know that you unconditionally accept who he or she is. Have you ever wondered why dogs are so lovable? Because they greet us with complete acceptance. If you have a tail, then wag it. If you don't, then smile. Of course, there's more to ensuring a good first impression, so let's continue. Regarding first impressions, there is something called the primacy effect. The process whereby our first impression of another person causes us to interpret his or her subsequent behavior in a manner consistent with the first impression. In English, this means that our first impression of someone is so crucial because everything we see and hear afterward gets filtered through our initial opinion. In effect, you create an image of the person right when you meet him, and you see his subsequent behaviors through this image. So, if his first impression of you is favorable, then he will tend to be kinder in his future evaluations of you. The importance of primacy is so significant that even the order of information that we receive about somebody alters our impression of him. Listen to these 2 lists of words. A. Cold person. Industrious, critical, practical, and determined. B. Warm person. Industrious, critical, practical, and determined. In this study by Harold Kelly, 1950, students who heard the description of an upcoming guest lecturer on List A had a harsher perception of him than those who heard from List B. As you heard, the words are identical except for the first one. Once we hear the first word, all of the other qualities are filtered through our initial perception of this person, that he is either warm or cold. Make that initial moment the very best, and the rest of your conversation will be filtered through it, thereby creating a highly favorable impression. Again, that is why smiling is so important. You can do it right away, and it says so much about you, and all positive. Another factor that can dramatically influence how we are initially perceived is that of accessibility and priming. Simply, it's been clearly demonstrated that the ease with which we can recall certain thoughts and ideas colors our perception. In a study showing just this, Higgins, Rolls, and Jones, 1977, those who had memorized the words reckless, conceited, aloof, and stubborn later formed negative impressions of a fictitious person. They viewed him as arrogant and as a person who needlessly took dangerous chances. However, people who first memorized the words adventurous, self-confident, independent, and persistent later formed positive impressions. Again, this is because these words and their corresponding ideas, what they represent, were in the front of their minds. And this colored their perception of a person whom they were introduced to for the very first time. Even though these words had nothing to do with the person, these qualities were easily accessible in the people's minds, and they hence unconsciously ascribed those traits to somebody whom they then met. So if you want to make a favorable impression on someone, it would benefit you if that person were to be recently exposed to positive words. If you're a job applicant, your resume should be peppered with positive adjectives. For example, assertive, energetic, decisive, passionate, resourceful. Instead of just saying who you are and what you are capable of, use strong, specific, and positive language to convey precisely your talents and capabilities. Then, when the interviewer meets you, shortly after reading through your resume, these traits are already primed for association with you. For another interesting application of the power of language, listen through Chapter 26, The Best Way to Break Bad News. PowerPoint. One of the biggest mistakes criminal defense attorneys make is to put their client on the stand when the details of the crime are still fresh and easily accessible in the minds of jurors. The better tactic is to put a witness or expert on the stand who uses positive and trusting language immediately prior to putting their client on the stand. In personal as well as business situations, you also want to lay the unconscious groundwork before you're introduced. Having a sales associate or your assistant tell your prospect about a recent vacation or a story that uses positive, uplifting language can be quite effective prior to your introduction. For instance, she might incorporate phrases such as, "Beautiful view of this majestic scene, felt completely at peace and such a sense of calm and security." This puts these themes directly in the mind of your prospect. Personal situations offer more of a challenge, as introducing a third party isn't always practical. One way to circumvent this is to introduce these words directly yourself in the beginning of the conversation. Even though you don't get the benefit of the primacy effect, you'll recall from Chapter 1, Get Anyone to Like You Every Time, the powerful influencing factor of association. These words will rub off onto you and will be unconsciously associated with you. PowerPoint. Who says you can't get a second chance at a first impression? If you did something incredibly inappropriate or stupid, do not try to defend your behavior. There's only one thing that will work. The phrase, "I feel so embarrassed." Why? Because this one phrase accomplishes three very important things. First, it shows that you know what you did was unacceptable, which means that you're unlikely to do it again. Second, it shows that you're human, and people actually like us more when we acknowledge something stupid and embarrassing and then take responsibility for it. Third, it shows complete honesty. And who doesn't want to deal with an honest person? Strategy review. Smile. Smiling accomplishes four powerful things. It conveys confidence, happiness, and enthusiasm, and, most important, it shows acceptance. Engage the primacy effect and make that initial moment, and the first 5 minutes or so, the very best, and the rest of your conversation will be filtered through it, thereby creating a highly favorable impression. The psychological phenomenon of accessibility and priming can dramatically influence how we are initially perceived. Lay the unconscious groundwork prior to your meeting.